It's tough to find housing in Windsor, not just to buy. Renters say they're being turned down by picky landlords. Food trucks on the menu in Tecumseh, still lots to discuss before anything's approved. We check in with one restaurant on wheels about what it takes to serve on the road. And a windy day here in Windsor, that humidity hitting hard as well. 34 with the Humidex right now. Nick Sirkovich with the forecast tonight. I'm Chris Ensing, thanks for joining us. Tilbury's only long-term care facility still in limbo. A local politician trying to help by looking into other options, but the wait for what's next is keeping residents and their loved ones on edge. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa joins us now live. Jen, what's been happening with this home?
Chris, with Tilbury Manor's future unknown, local MPP Rick Nichols says he's heard the concerns from families and is looking to have another company offer a long-term care service in the region. So while it may not be Tilbury Manor per se, Nichols is hoping someone else will step in.
I feel badly for the families that feel that they will be affected by families today and families in the future that would be affected by that. But we're trying to work out a comparable solution for these people. So I've been working on the side to find out if there's an opportunity for another company or organization to in fact build a new long-term care home in the Tilbury area. And of course that's a long process.
One of those families voicing concern is Donna Benoit. Her mom, Loretta, has lived in Tilbury Manor for nearly 5 years. She's 95 and has dementia. Her 93-year-old sister and her daughter, who live close by, drop in often to visit.
What I'm most concerned about is the visiting and the socializing that family members would not have if they're not in Tilbury. There's a sunroom at Tilbury Manor that views the downtown kind of corner, the post office. You can see the church and the cenotaph and the library and the traffic. It's that's kind of her stimulation, that familiarity. That's her town, right? And she wouldn't know Bell River. Why can't they stay home? I think these companies have to take on, like I said, their social responsibility to the communities they serve.
Jen, how likely is it that someone else will step in and provide care for people like Loretta?
It's hard to say. Nichols told me he's having conversations with people, but nothing is confirmed. And even if someone wants to fill the gap, he says the process to get approval for a home can take up to 3 years, and that's before a building even goes up. The need is urgent. Tilbury Manor's license expire in 2025, and Arch Corporation, its owner, says it's not planning to renew them. This is because the home would require significant renovations to be eligible to stay open. The company has already bought the land in Bell River for 160 new beds. These are ones that the government allotted to Arch back in November, but the ministry still needs to give the company a license for the Bell River home. I asked the ministry about this process, and they just reiterated that the application is under review. For now, it's a waiting game. Chris.
And something we'll keep an eye on. Thanks for this, Jen. It's well documented that Windsor has a lack of affordable housing. That crunch means landlords, they can be choosy about who gets to live in their places, but it's leaving some scrambling to get by. Jacob Barker has that story.
This is not a position Joshua McLennan expected to find himself in.
The owners have taken very good care of me here, luckily, because the rental situation here is very picky and choosy.
He's staying here at the Leisure Motel, a tight squeeze.
In any motel or any hotel, living in it permanently, it's hard to condense your life into a small area.
The 22-year-old was working as a DJ at a downtown bar, but hasn't worked since March of last year. He's lived in some less than ideal environments, and with his mom, it costs him about $350 per week to live here, more than most rents, and there are other costs too.
I order out a lot. That's where my savings are going. The taxi fare is another one, transportation into the city.
But it isn't money that's the problem. He could spend up to $1,200 a month on a place, but even with offering first and last month's rent up front, the denials keep coming.
Private landlords, management companies, house searching agencies. Every time I come up with a rejection notice or a decline.
Have you gone through agencies as well?
I'm on the wait list for housing, and there's someone that's mentoring me on looking for apartments, but beyond that, there's really no supports in place if you're on EI.
Housing is a known issue in Windsor. A lack of available units in the city means the power is in the hands of the landlords.
They'll see what they can find that fits their needs. They have a lot more choice now with regards to renters, and so they'll look at their building dynamic, they'll look at the floor the unit's on, and they'll think about who's a good fit. And sometimes that can be really hard for folks that are continuously trying to get units and never do.
Holmes says that in his 6 years on the job, housing has always been difficult, but people need to keep at it.
Individuals that do have the first and last, that do have the money there, I guess my advice to them is to not give up, right? Because it is kind of almost a needle in a haystack scenario.
For McClement, the experience hasn't been an easy one.
People need to be less choosy with their rentals. There's people that are trying out here. People that are stuck in motel rooms, people that are stuck out on the streets. And you're turning people with good money, good references, good places of work, you're turning them away.
Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
River Place residents have seen months of repeated vandalism, and now people who call that place home have just 5 days to find somewhere else to live.
We didn't believe that any further repairs to the building without a significant amount of security in the building would be effective. The vandalism would just continue. Unfortunately, a few individuals have created a really bad situation here with this building, but it seems extreme, and it's unfortunate that we have to close this building down and remove the tenants, and they're losing their homes.
The city has issued an order prohibiting occupancy, saying that the building's too unsanitary and unsafe to live in. It comes almost a week after a separate order was issued to repair running water, but was vandalized just 1 day after repairs were made. Officials say they regret this outcome, but add they're providing assistance to help residents find somewhere else to live. River Place is home to some people who were formerly living at the Tent City Ravine. And the health unit has issued an alert after seeing a spike of opioid-related hospital visits. Between July 6th and 13th, there were 26 emergency department visits. 18 were overdoses, 17 involved fentanyl. The remainder of cases were non-overdose methamphetamine visits. They say historically the numbers for this time frame are low, and these numbers, they exceed expected thresholds. The Integrity Commissioner is recommending suspending pay for a councillor in Essex. Sherry Bondi was found to have violated the code of conduct by publicly criticizing Elk Energy and town staff.
Quite recently, after Councillor Vanderdolen had his tweet out, the mayor said in council, you know, Councillor Bondi, I'm coming after you, and you have to watch what you put on Facebook. So I'm not surprised. I knew it was coming. I do think the Integrity Commissioner is interpreting my criticism as harassment, and I think that's too far.
A report goes to council next week. In it, the Integrity Commissioner says if Bondi continues to criticize staff, he will recommend a 90-day suspension of pay each time. He says councillors can be critical of staff, but it has to be between council and done privately. The initial complaint came in from the mayor. He refused to comment. Councillor Chris Vanderdolen was also investigated by the Integrity Commissioner earlier this year. There's another vaccine milestone in Windsor, Essex. More than 500,000 shots have been administered in the region. More than 60% of the adult population fully vaccinated. All of this as businesses prep for tomorrow's entry into Step 3.
Well, our dining room has been a storage room for the past so many months, so we just have to make sure that everything is nicely sanitized and cleaned. So the barriers allow us to increase our capacity inside. It obviously does a barrier between tables, so we can have tables closer together.
Businesses on Erie Street are busy today getting prepared for indoor dining. Restaurants limited by capacity but must be able to maintain a 2-meter distance between tables, and masks they have to be worn when moving about.
I think this is our second opening of the inside, or third in the last year and a half, so yeah, not a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
A lot of work, eh?
Lots of work, some money that's wasted for things that have expired and things. Yeah, so we're going to be doing some touch-ups. We're going to be doing some painting just to touch it up and make it all look fresh. The inside seating is definitely going to help with weather for sure, because we've had a lot of cancellations in the last few months due to weather. So Oh, we've been doing it for days now. As we're taking tables, we've been just getting the dining room ready slowly. So we'll be ready for tomorrow for sure.
Now, Mezzo's capacity is usually 191 customers. Even with the indoor seating, they'll only be able to accommodate 80 people. They also have a patio doors. They open for indoor seating for lunch tomorrow. And Transit Windsor's board has approved going ahead with buying 24 new buses. Now, those will replace aging buses in the fleet. Transit Windsor's executive director is saying that the buses will be more cost-effective and better for the environment. The buses will cost $17 million, but the city will be able to leverage more than $12 million of that from federal and provincial infrastructure grants. City Council still has to approve the expenditure, but this has already put a replacement policy in place, which this conforms to. The buses should be added to the fleet next year. There's a growing debate in this province about whether COVID-19 vaccinations should be mandatory for healthcare workers. Premier Doug Ford has now come out firmly against the idea. Our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley, has the story.
The very first people in Ontario to receive a COVID-19 vaccination were long-term care staff. Since then, thousands more health workers have got the shot, but that's not the case for everyone working in the system. It means if you're a hospital patient or a long-term care resident, there's no guarantee that the people taking care of you are actually vaccinated.
Especially in a hospitalized setting or a long-term care setting. But quite frankly, if you are patient-facing, you should be vaccinated for COVID-19, full stop. You should be. We cannot put the people we're there to help at risk. It's just unacceptable.
Mandatory vaccinations for certain jobs are not a new thing. In Ontario, paramedics and childcare workers must be immunized against a whole range of communicable diseases or get an official exemption. So should Ontario also require health workers to be vaccinated against COVID-19? This top nursing official thinks so.
It is our duty to do no harm to patients. We know what we need to do to protect patients.
This week in France, President Emmanuel Macron announced that healthcare workers must get vaccinated or face job sanctions. Other European countries have made similar rules.
1, 2, 3.
Here in Ontario, the Premier is against mandating COVID vaccinations for health workers.
No, I think it's their constitutional right to take it or not take it. We encourage them to do it. I've been up here for months begging, pleading everyone to get it, but no one should be forced to do anything.
The opposition leader isn't convinced either.
That I would need to have real evidence and advice that indicates that that's the next step that would be required.
CBC News obtained a policy proposal drafted this month for the Ontario government. It would let healthcare workers choose not to get vaccinated so long as they wear PPE and get tested regularly. With Doug Ford's comments today, it appears the province won't even go that far. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Food trucks could one day roll their way into Tecumseh. Staff have been asked to look at permit options for mobile food vendors. It's something that Amherstburg explored years ago. I caught up with the owner of the smashed apple truck to see what helped them survive and thrive. Flipping wonton chips in a trailer. Not the future Billy Deslip imagined, but with this food truck, he's found freedom.
I realized as I matured and grew and learned that I really don't want that full-time commitment to my job. I'd rather be more committed to my family and then still really grind hard when I have to work at my job. Where's my spikes?
Deslip can take the smashed apple anywhere. Festivals, weddings, business, it's booming into different sectors. His spices and Caesar mix now on shelves at bars and retailers, made possible by a mobile kitchen.
And the food truck is just an easier way to be able to, as a chef, put your passion on a plate and be yourself and do your own thing.
But it's been a long road, starting a bit bumpy in Amherstburg.
Our food truck bylaws, when I came around, were really antiquated. They were written for, like the Dickie D cart, essentially, right? They really had not experienced it.
Working with council, he helped fine-tune policy. Being able to flip his food at a municipal park with a permit was a big break. The other shift, letting people park on commercial properties.
And I think that was one of the big things that restaurants were pissed off about, was that you have these food trucks coming in and not paying commercial taxes. Well, by putting them on commercial properties and either having a rental agreement or some type of agreement with the owner of the property or being the owner of the property, you're already paying commercial taxes and it covers that base.
Tecumseh wants in on the action, now asking for advice on how to get this right.
What is in the realm of possibility? Like, are there spots in our community that might be suitable for having this kind of service being present? And I'd like to think that there are.
One option, permits for parks or in a business district. They're happy to hear suggestions, which Deslip is dishing out.
I love to see the fact that the company is kind of getting on board. I think it'd be really cool if they, maybe looked at some kind of food truck circle where you have a licensed venue, where there's a central bar and then a bunch of food trucks kind of gather together. It's always better when you have numbers. People will come out to something that is more unique instead of allowing one food truck here, one food truck there, and then pitting them against each other. I think that building a community behind it and kind of growing into something that everyone can use and everyone can enjoy, it would be the progressive way to go.
Getting feedback is going to take time, says council. They hope to have something more concrete to look at by 2022. We spotted a cool schooner out on the water today in the Detroit River this afternoon. We thought you needed to see it too. This is the Inland Seas. It's an educational vessel. It's always nice when you see something odd on the river, something a little bit special. Makes part of working here so much fun. Nick Sirkovich is going to join us next, the other reason why I show up every day. He'll give us an idea of what the forecast has when he joins us after the break. A tornado has caused significant damage in Barrie. It tore through a neighborhood in the city this afternoon. You're looking at some of the damage there. Shortly after Environment Canada had issued a tornado warning for a large part of the region. The storm caused extensive damage along a corridor in the south end of the city, knocking out power, ripping roofs off houses. Barrie police say several people have been hurt. First responders now on the scene. We bring in Nick. We're looking at some of the damage and destruction here. What was on the radar there? What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, you know, Chris, when you're looking at these tornadoes, a lot of times you'll see signals that would suggest there's a tornado on the that there's a tornado forming, or that the conditions are ripe for a tornado. But you can't really know until you get these eyewitness accounts. So Environment Canada had issued a tornado warning, basically based on what they were seeing as rotation in the thunderstorms. And I was looking at the radar, tracking this thing throughout the afternoon, and it was very obvious that these storms were rotating. So those are called mesocyclones. And while they don't often or always produce tornadoes, often tornadoes are produced by these things. And so, I mean, it was obvious that these were severe storms. And then we started seeing the stuff coming out on social media, specifically the pictures and the damage. And so Environment Canada confirming that it was, in fact, a tornado. It was these two cells that were pushing through the Barrie area and just south of Barrie, and then they continued eastward very fast, by the way, about 60, 65 kilometers per hour. Rotation in both of these storms, but this is the one that likely produced the tornado. And that was the story through the afternoon. Now, there's still severe thunderstorm activity across the region at this point right now. They've dropped the tornado warnings, but there are severe thunderstorm watches and warnings in effect in those regions. Not so for Windsor. We had some severe thunderstorm watches in effect down in this area earlier today. Those have been dropped. Still seeing some thunderstorm activity, but it's pretty scattered. It's not the organized stuff that we're seeing just north of the city of Toronto and, of course, south of Barrie there. As we head through tonight, isolated thunder showers basically dissipating, so for the most part drying up. And then as we head through tomorrow morning, though, we've got another wave. So this system is all sort of interconnected, and the second wave of this system is moving through. It's going to bring some thunderstorms down around Windsor, Leamington, maybe Chatham, and then more sort of a rain event down toward London and Sarnia. That lasts through tomorrow into Saturday morning, kind of tapers off by Saturday. Sunday generally doesn't look too bad. We've got some wet weather in the forecast here. Temperature-wise, we're sitting at 26 degrees right now with the humidex, though still 35. We're going to see that come down a little bit into tomorrow. Overnight tonight, I know it looks like thunderstorms. I mean, I put that in more for the evening, but this stuff is pretty much dissipating as we head through the evening. Tomorrow, though, another round of rain, showers, and thunderstorms. Humidex only to 30 tomorrow. Temperatures to 24, and then it slowly kind of creeps up, but kind of Friday, Saturday is going to be the wet one. You can see as much as 25 millimeters or more if we get locally heavy amounts there. But definitely severe weather today, Chris. And I mean, you know, sometimes you just look at it and you know. And today was one of those cases where, I mean, it was very obvious these were severe thunderstorms, but particularly severe thunderstorms. And thankfully, Environment Canada got the warnings out before, even if only a few minutes. But that's often all you get with these.
Yeah. Those warnings are certainly helpful at a time like this. Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
Travel restrictions in the Canada-U.S. border, they're set to expire on July 21st. A look at the pressure both countries are facing next. travel restrictions at the Canada-U.S. border are set to expire on July 21st. These measures have been in place since the pandemic started back on March of 2020. The federal government under increasing pressure from business groups on both sides of the border to ease those restrictions. But this comes at a time when the number of COVID-19 cases in the U.S. is on the rise. One expert offers this advice: learn from past mistakes.
Fundamentally, first, we have to make sure the virus is well controlled, because if we cut corners, as we have done at other times before in this pandemic, then although in the very short term, in a week or two, things look great, then generally speaking, it will come back to haunt us. And it's hard to have an active economy. It's hard to have an active amount of tourism if you are also dealing with a huge number of cases.
Now, no official word yet on what will happen with the border after July 21st, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said earlier today he will be discussing it with Canada's premiers tonight. An announcement could come as early as next week. A First Nation in British Columbia has released its detailed report on the discovery of unmarked graves at a former residential school. The discovery came to light back in May when more than 200 potential grave sites were found. It was the first in a series of similar finds across Western Canada.
We are here today to honor the missing children in our caretakership who have experienced unthinkable circumstances leading to their death and whose remains were placed in unmarked graves.
The search for graves was triggered by the discovery of a child's rib bone and a tooth in an apple orchard at the former Kamloops residential school. Experts are using ground-penetrating radar. They conducted a detailed search of about 1 hectare of the grounds. They say there are another 65 hectares that need to be examined. Chief Roseanne Casimir called on the Prime Minister, the federal government, and the Catholic order that ran the school to turn over student attendance records for the institution. It would help the nation fulfill its responsibility to identify the missing children and reunite them with their home communities. The Olympics start in a little more than a week, and one Canadian road cyclist celebrating her entry. Canadian road cyclist Allison Jackson showing that despite all the bad news from Tokyo, she and other athletes thrilled to be heading to Japan. She found out last minute that she's going to the games.
Waking up and to all these calls and some from foreign numbers, from Japanese numbers, and wondering if this is real life. And then things have just happened so quickly. Mostly just still in a lot of shock because this is one of my lifelong dreams come true, and it's just happening in a moment.
Jackson got the call after another country withdrew, allowing Canada to add a third rider to its women's road race team. She says her family won't be going along with her because fans aren't allowed at the events, but she says that will allow her to focus more on the race. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media too. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report, it's up next. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.